We analyze trends from the Baltimore Ravens 2022 preseason so far with a very special guest next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we return here with another episode of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I am your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire. We're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Ravens your first listen today. We're free and available on all platforms. That includes over on YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Brightco Jewelry and Watch Insurance. Brightco brings you comprehensive, fast, and affordable jewelry insurance for as low as $5 per month. Check out your special offer for Locked On listeners to get covered in under 2 minutes at bright.co/locked on. That's bright.co/locked on. And we're back here on a Thursday edition episode, the final week of the 2022 preseason creeping up. And here to talk about some trends we've seen so far through the first 2 weeks is from two guys watching football, Cole Jackson. Cole, I'm excited to have you back on the show. How you doing?
I'm doing good, buddy. I'm tired. I got the 3-month-old. I think I can hear her crying right now upstairs, but things are going good, man. Just excited to have football back, excited to have some film to watch. So I'm just ready to get going, and I'm ready for this thing to finally be real football again. We're about 2 weeks out. I'm excited.
Yeah, and we get one more week of the preseason film to dive into. Cole, I know you've been you're driving the film from these first 2 weeks of the preseason. We'll get to that in the second segment, kind of looking at some trends we've seen so far. But I first wanted to get your opinion on a couple of things the Ravens have done or haven't done over the course of these past couple of days here. Now, one of them being the Demarcus Robinson signing, a receiver who a lot of people have been clamoring and saying, look, the Ravens need a veteran wide receiver. Demarcus Robinson becomes the veteran of that room at 27 years old, so not like this 10-year veteran or anything. But where are you on this signing? Was this somebody that you are completely fine with them bringing in? Would you have rather seen somebody else, or is this a move that really doesn't sway you one way or the other?
I don't think it sways me too much. I think he has the right skill set that the Ravens needed. He kind of played some of that Sammy Watkins role whenever Sammy Watkins would get hurt while he was a Chief. It was always Robinson that kind of backfilled him beside or across from Tyreek Hill, doing a little bit of the X, a little bit of the Z, but really stretching the field and being like that kind of true boundary receiver. So in terms of what they lost in Sammy Watkins, I think they got a more durable, so a more available but less skilled player. So I mean, it really depends on how you look at it. You know, it's definitely a downgrade skill wise, but the fact that he actually might be available in more games and he might not have to spend games working back to health may actually give better output of play. So I like the skill set, but I still think, like, when you look around the league, I still think we're going to see a number of cut downs. Guy like a Darius Slayton doesn't look like he's in the Giants' plans. I think he'd be a better fit, a better upgrade. Not necessarily an upgrade to Sammy, but a better fit for the team. So we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. But I definitely like that they got the right skill set.
Yeah, and you look around the league too, just who's still available. I mean, the Will Fullers of the world, the T.Y. Hiltons, the Odell Beckham, who's currently injured. Demarcus Robinson gives you the availability aspect that the Ravens you mentioned with Sammy Watkins. When he was signed, one of the first things people said was, well, he's going to miss some games. And what did he do? He went out there and he missed some games. So I think that's a really big aspect of it. But Cole, with this signing, the contract specs about $1.035 million, $895,000 of that guaranteed. Seems like his roster spot is pretty guaranteed at that point. So when you're talking about the 5 or 6 wide receiver conversation, we've seen Shamar Bridges, Mekhi Polk, Riley Webb. Do you think this might signal Baltimore could keep 6 wideouts, or do you still see them at 5?
I could see 6 because, I mean, that's the thing about it. It stinks. No one lost more in this move than Shamar Bridges. And I say that because Mekhi Polk and Riley Webb have been bigger contributors on special teams than Shamar Bridges. And so I thought Bridges was really pushing for kind of an actual receiver role versus a special teams role that's done by a receiver, like we've seen in the past with some of those special teams guys that come in and be gunners and that sort of thing. So we saw Riley Webb play special teams. He was a gunner. We saw Mekhi Polk be a gunner. Riley Webb actually led the offense in special team snaps with 10 last week. So, I mean, they see him as a special teamer. And we saw him do a little bit of receiver. I think Shamar Bridges is clearly the better receiver. But then you see Makai Polk do a little bit of both. So it makes it kind of tough to figure out what direction they're going to go. But this signing definitely tells me, and a lot of this depends on the health of Tylan Wallace, because Tylan Wallace did play gunner snaps and will contribute as a receiver. And I think he was back in practice yesterday. So if he's back, I mean, that bodes well for, them looking at the 6 wide receiver. So where to draw the line here between these three, it's tough. I think Bridges is going to give you the better wide receiver, but Riley Webb and Makai Polk will give you better special teamers who may also play some wide receiver snaps. So it's going to come down to, and I know there's going to be people frustrated, but that's just the way the Ravens do this. That 6 wide receiver spot may as well be called a special team spot. It's always how they operate.
Right, and even with James Prochet missing some time still right now, is he somebody who has to go on IR? Right now he's not practicing. Maybe he comes back and everything's good, and hopefully that's the case. But you don't know. Maybe he's going to have to go on IR once the season starts, obviously on the 53-man, and there's maybe a handshake somewhere, so you'll see. But the Ravens do have a lot of undrafted guys. Maybe they keep 3 of those guys on the practice squad, and they can kind of filter guys in and out of like the taxi squad as it is on the 55 players you can put up. So it's one aspect of that, Cole. Another aspect is the injuries Baltimore suffered in 2021. Now we've started to see some guys filter off the PUP list, and J.K. Dobbins, Marcus Peters. 2 of the guys who have not, though, Ronnie Stanley and Tyus Bowser. Now Bowser suffered his injury in week 18, so his status for week 1 has always been a bit uncertain, to where people could maybe say, all right, he'll come back maybe in the middle of the year. Maybe we'll see him then. But for Stanley, someone who suffered really what was just a horrific, brutal ankle injury, ended up trying to come back last year, only played in the 1 game, opted for the second surgery. Now, you said your panic date was yesterday on August 24th. Where are you at with these 2 guys in terms of their health and when they could be back?
I mean, I just don't know, what. It's hard to say. I mean, it's so hard to speculate on injuries, but what's 2 weeks, 3 weeks going to do for Ronnie Stanley at this point? I just don't get it. And maybe it's just a lack of information around what the rehab is. I mean, they said it was structurally fine, but he needs to be conditioned. But I mean, he's kind of been in conditioning for the last few months from the looks of it. We've seen him doing some things. We saw him, moving around the facility without a brace. They haven't been talking about wearing a brace. So it's the conditioning, it's can't he do individual drills while he gets up to speed on his condition? It just didn't make sense. So that's been the frustrating part. I don't know what to do with Ronnie at this point. I think the way I'm going to operate is the Ravens won't have Ronnie Stanley, and if he comes back, it's just a bonus. I'm not willing to get hurt again. I'm not going to do the Office meme where he says, I'm ready to get hurt again. I don't know. It's just, the whole story has never made sense. So I just don't know really what's holding him back. I guess that's what's been the trouble. I had a hard time buying that conditioning is the reason. You could do individual drills while you're doing your conditioning. I don't know. But then when you look at Bowser, like you said, I mean, that injury was late in the year. We always knew it was going to bleed into this year. It's an Achilles injury, which can be a little tricky in terms of getting your explosiveness back. I think what I've been surprised with is they did add Stephen Means. They brought Justin Houston back, but I'm really surprised that they don't have another veteran coming into, they brought in Jason Pierre-Paul to look at, but I'm just a little surprised with what's going on there. They've kind of been operating as if they'd have him back, but again, you'd think you'd be seeing him this week if he was on track to play week 1. So it's just it's one of those things where we don't have all the information, and it can lead to some confusion and frustration.
Right, and going back to Stanley a bit, Cole, assuming he's not healthy, and obviously you want to assume he is, but in the case that he isn't, how confident are you in the guys that they currently have operating for that left tackle position? Because last year was a lot of the Alejandro Villanueva show, and it didn't go super well.
Yeah, don't remind me. I just did a video this morning. It's a Juwan James film breakdown. So, I mean, go check that out over on 2 Guys Watching Football if you guys want to see it. I picked 16 snaps from his first 2 games, 16 pass snaps, to kind of look at how he was performing. And, I mean, there's stuff to fix. There was pressures allowed, but nothing that was staggering to me. So, but, I also felt pretty good about AV in the preseason. He didn't look as bad. So is it because it's the level of competition? Guys aren't going as hard because it's a preseason. It's really hard to say, but I will say James looks very athletic, and that's exciting because that's what you need in your left tackle. You need a good pass protector. So I do think they have three options that they can go through. Last year they kind of had one. It was AV, and then after that it was Tyree Phillips, and he's not a tackle. So this year they'd have to go through James, Moses, Makari, before you're getting into Phillips. So I think they brought in guys. Jason Peters is still a free agent. If he was looking for a 1-year deal that they could fit under the cap, it'd be really tough to do because I think he could still get a nice chunk of change. But I think they'll find a solution. But I've been pretty impressed with Juwan James' play. He hasn't done anything alarming to me.
And your 1A is obviously Ronnie Stanley. Like, that is the plan you want to have come to fruition. But if you have to, again, go through what you went through last season and stuff doesn't really come to fruition the way you want it to, Baltimore, I think, is much more equipped to deal with that. And this is multiple positions across the board, too, than they were last year just because of how many injuries they suffered for sure. But coming up here on Locked On Ravens, still a ton to talk about. We're going to be diving in to some offensive trends that we've seen throughout the first couple of weeks of the 2022 preseason for Baltimore. So be sure to stay tuned. We still have a ton to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. But first, we've all seen those failed engagement. The engagement fails where sometimes the ring falls into the ocean or it falls down a sewer. And you don't want to be that guy, and you certainly don't want it splattered all over the internet. The guys at Bright Code Jewelry Insurance will make sure you get a replacement for the full value of that ring, no matter if it's lost or stolen or you just can't figure out what happened to it. And we all hate insurance. The guys at Bright Code turn the whole experience around, though, so it's probably the easiest thing you can do for yourself this week. There are no excuses. For $5 a month, you get a totally comprehensive coverage, and it won't take you more than 2 minutes on your cell phone. Check it out now, bright.co/locked on. We're back here. Our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Alshaker, your host, still here with you. And thank you so much for making Locked On Ravens your first listen today. We, again, are free and available on all platforms. Be sure to subscribe to this channel on YouTube. Follow us along in audio form as well. But now we're going to be talking about some trends we've seen on the offensive side of the ball with Cole Jackson. So let's talk about that now. Cole, the preseason, the question I keep asking is, will the Ravens ever lose again? I honestly don't think so. I'm just going to assume they win every game from here on out. It's 2015. It's a long time. But we've seen some trends start to kind of form over these past couple of weeks. And I know with you studying the film, watching the film, I wanted to get your opinions on what you have seen. So let's start on offense. Let's start with the quarterbacks. Tyler Huntley and Anthony Brown, both really impressive. I mean, what have you seen from them and some trends that developed for you for them?
I mean, Tyler Huntley's looked excellent. His decisiveness, his arm strength, two things that really popped out to me as things that got better from last year. That's one thing with some of these Isaiah Likely plays that I was breaking down over on the channel. It was just the ball coming out really, really quick, really tight, making it really easy on Likely to use his separation to his advantage. So I thought that was really exciting. Anthony Brown surprised me. I hope they keep him around on the practice squad. I'd really like to see him develop. He looks a heck of a lot better than he did at Oregon, which is always fun. And maybe he's just a guy that's going to be a better pro than he was a college player. So I like Brown a lot. Had that pick, but he also had that beautiful strike to, I think he threw the one to Webb last week. So, it's been good. And so I really like where the backup quarterback situation is in Baltimore right now.
Yeah, and I'm not thinking they're going to keep 3 quarterbacks on this roster. I think it's going to be 2, and then you have the one practice squad guy. Now, obviously, we saw last year with Trace McSorley, there is an option for teams to go out and get that player off the practice squad if he impresses. But Anthony Brown's somebody who, I didn't know what to expect heading into the preseason with him, but I have been very impressed. And that throw to Riley Webb, I just thought was so beautiful. It was amazing. And let's move on to running backs, Cole. You have guys who have been vying for some playing time here. Obviously, Gus Edwards moved over to the reserve PUP list, so he's not going to be available for the first month of the year at least. You have J.K. Dobbins coming back, so what's his role going to be like? Mike Davis has gotten some run. Tyler Beatty, Justice Hill, to start with him, somebody who just looks to have more burst, really wasn't going to make this team last year if it wasn't for the injury, and he was able to kind of come back. He didn't have a good training camp, didn't have a good preseason. What have you seen from those guys that maybe might have to take on some bigger roles here early on?
Yeah, I think Justice Hill was kind of an afterthought, and his play this preseason has really impressed me. Anyway, I think I was shocked at how well he played. So I think that's really encouraging. Tyler Beatty has looked really good as a pass protector. I think he's looked really good in the receiving game. It's tough to break down his runs because the offensive line, that third unit offensive line, just hasn't been as good. So, I mean, I think he had like a 1.9 average the other day. So it's kind of like, well, what's he producing? But a lot of those runs were kind of swallowed up early. I felt like it's really hard to judge those. So, it's tough to see what to do there. I see a role for him, and I thought Mike Davis has ran really hard too. So you're kind of in a situation where looks like there's four guys. Justice Hill also plays special teams. He had a couple really good special team snaps on the weekend. So maybe he sneaks in as a fourth running back because he can play that special teams role. Maybe they don't go with a 6 wide receiver we talked about early, but guys are running hard. Nate McCrary's running hard too, but I just think there's just too many numbers now for him to sneak in there. So it's going to be tough for him. But, I really think they're going to have a hard time cutting Justice Hill, and his special teams might be what saves him.
Yeah, and with the whole notion that, I've been operating under the notion that they're probably going to keep 4 running backs. If Gus Edwards now is not going to be available for those games, I think that the clear cut for at this point would be J.K. Dobbins, Mike Davis, Tyler Beatty, and Justice Hill. But I think when you're looking at some of these trends, Cole, the pass protection from these running backs has been very impressive. We saw Justice Hill had a couple of really nice pass protection snaps in week 1 against Tennessee. Tyler Beatty picked up that blitz off the edge really nicely on that Riley Webb throw. So you have a couple of really nice options there. And also, you look at stuff about the wide receiver room, Cole. There is a lot to like about it. Now, Shamar Bridges was the guy that you can look at in that situation, but I think overall you have other guys like Mekhi Polk and Riley Webb that could really do some good things.
Yeah, I agree. And so it really comes down to, are they going to keep a developmental receiver, or are they going to focus more on the special teams role? Because one thing that I think goes really well with that is I think Mekhi Polk might be the best of both worlds. We haven't really seen Bridges. We saw Harbaugh talk about it, but we didn't really see him play special teams. So it's hard to say really what we could do with a comparison there. But Shamar Bridges looks like the better receiver out of the 3. Riley Webb looks like the better special teamer. And I think Mekhi Polk is the best of both worlds. So what's your flavor of ice cream that you want to have between those 3? And that's kind of where you'll lean.
Yeah, and for me in particular, you look at the wide receiver position. People want to start putting Isaiah Likely over there in that wide receiver position, but now we'll talk about him as a tight end. He has taken over the preseason. He's been incredible. What are the trends you've seen out of his game so far through 2 weeks?
Yeah, no, like I did 2 film rooms on him just because he's been the best offensive player, so you got to highlight him. But what impresses me the most about Likely is the way he wins against man, wins against zone. He's winning with route running. He's winning with physicality. He's winning with speed. He's winning against linebackers. He's winning against DBs. He gets yards after the catch. He's just every box that you could have for a tight end. He's checking it. And yes, he's doing a lot of work in the slot. He's a tight end. He's probably going to be considered a tight end, and he's going to play some wide receiver roles just like Mark Andrews does, just like Hayden Hurst did in 2019. People are worrying way too much about the wide receiver thing. He is a tight end who will also play a little bit of wide receiver. Don't worry. They may not know how to use their wide receivers as well, but they definitely know how to use their tight ends.
Yeah, they are going to use them very effectively overall. And let's talk about this offensive line, Cole. I have to ask you about the offensive line with you being an offensive line guy. We talked a bit about Jawan James, but the other guys on that line, the left guard competition being one that is one to watch and has been over these first couple of weeks. What trends have you seen from there?
I think Ben Cleveland deserves a start at I would start him at left guard, to be honest. I think he's been the most impressive, but he's also doing it late in the game. So, the level of competition's dropping off, but he has been the most consistent performer through 2 games. Tyree Phillips is also doing, I would say he's doing okay. I would like to see more consistency, and that's always been his issue. He'll have snaps where he looks so great, and then one that's just a complete question mark, and it's just frustrating. It's got to be frustrating for the coaching staff. And I can't figure out what they're doing with Ben Powers. They say he's left guard 1, starts at right guard, then they move him to center, doesn't play left guard in the game. And keep in mind, we didn't have our left tackle, assuming Stanley's the left tackle, but if it is James, they did have their left tackle. They didn't have their center. They didn't have the right guard. They didn't have the right tackle. So you have one guy that you're hoping is your starter, according to you, saying he's left guard 1 for week in this game, and you don't play him at his normal position, but then people say he's left guard 1. I just don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. So I don't get that situation. It looks to me like it's Tyree Phillips' spot. I think Ben Cleveland has outperformed him, but I need to see him against better competition. What I would do, start both of them Phillips in Cleveland at left guard, right guard. Rest Kevin Zeitler again. He doesn't need it. He's going to play top level right guard play. So that's what I would do at the left guard competition.
Right, and I do feel more confident in the offensive line as a whole here, Cole, than we did maybe last year when the depth was really, really just thin overall. Baltimore's depth is very, very much improved this year, I feel like, in multiple different aspects, especially on the offensive side of the ball, those positions that were hit pretty hard due to injuries such as running back and offensive tackle in particular. And coming up, we're going to be diving into some trends we have seen on the defensive side of the ball and special teams as well for the Baltimore Ravens through 2 weeks of the 2022 preseason. So be sure to stay tuned. We do still have a ton to talk about here on the show. But first, I do want to tell you a bit about LinkedIn. And as you gear up for the fall, you need the right people on your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. I've used LinkedIn Jobs for a ton of different things throughout my life. You can create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job to the purple hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile. Spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. You have simple tools to use like screening questions that make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experiences. So you can quickly prioritize who would like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job free. Terms and conditions apply. We're back here, our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher, your host, still here with you again. Thank you so much for making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. Be sure to subscribe here on YouTube, follow along in audio form. Let's dive into our final segment here with Cole Jackson, talking about some defensive and special teams trends we've seen throughout 2 preseason games. Let's get into it now. Let's get into some defensive trends quickly here. Talking about the defensive line, Travis Jones has taken over that positional group in the preseason. Now, the injury kind of throws a little damper on it, but that group also has really awesome guys like Aaron Crawford, Isaiah Mack, who probably might not be able to make this team when they deserve to be on 53-man roster somewhere else.
Yeah, I think it's one of those interesting things because what do you do with Travis Jones? If he's 3 to 5 weeks, that could get him back for week 2, week 3. He could be IR'd and come back week 5. So why not do that, get him completely healthy, and give Mack or Crawford a run with the backup nose tackle spot as sort of a pass rush specialist? It's not ideal. I would prefer to see Travis Jones earlier rather than later. But if they really want to give one of those guys a hard look before just cutting them, because they will catch on elsewhere, they played too well. And you want to make sure Jones is healthy. If it is a 3 to 5 week timeline, lean towards the 5 weeks. I mean, he's missing 1 extra game if you IR him. Not the end of the world. You get him back in October. You have him down the season. You know he's going to be healthy and fresh. So that's one thing they could do to kind of get a look at Mack and Crawford. I probably have Mack a little bit ahead of Crawford in that battle right now. I just think he's played a little bit better. So that's what I would do there.
Yeah, and all the depth overall looks really, really, really good. And for Baltimore, inside and outside linebackers, Cole, very interesting ones. Josh Ross, I mean, the inside linebacker group, unreal. You're talking about a player that is a Michigan guy and Mike McDonald coming over. I had Jacoby McClain taking over that maybe 4th inside linebacker spot, but Josh Ross has quickly ascended past that. And outside linebacker-wise, you mentioned Steven Means. What have you seen from those 2 positions?
Yeah, I think Josh Ross is running with it. I have a video coming out. Well, this would be tomorrow. Yeah, so there's a video today that's a Josh Ross film room looking at what he does so well and why I think he's going to make this team. I think he might. It's going to be tough because Christian Welch is a key special teamer, and I know everyone's sick of talking. You can be talking about special teamers, but when we're talking about the bottom of the roster, that's really what we're looking at. So we'll see, but Ross is a better linebacker, I think, than Welch. Welch might be the better special teamer. So can Ross play good enough special teams to justify? I hope so, because I'd really like to see Ross stick around. He's just been too good. At the outside linebacker spot, I mean, Steven Means has played quite well. I think Dalen Hayes has flashed. He shows that really nice dip in his pass rush opportunities. Jeremiah Moons looked okay. So we kind of talked about this before we recorded, but I've just been surprised they haven't added anyone. You know, Ajabo's not going to be back anytime soon. You still don't really know where Bowser is. So, you know, what are they doing there? You know, you have Owe, who, I mean, he's only played like 10 snaps, but he looks like an absolute animal this year. So Owe is going to be fun. You got Houston. Hayes is there. You know, Means is there, but do you trust those 2? Do you want another guy as like a rotational pass rusher that comes in obvious passing down situations like a Jason Pierre-Paul? So we'll see what they do there in terms of an addition, but really like the inside linebacker room. Looking forward to seeing how Ross plays in this week. I hope we see him against earlier competition, maybe against twos rather than threes.
Yeah, and you're talking about also earlier competition. Some of those secondary members, Cole. Hopefully, we'll get to see Kyle Hamilton for a lot of maybe this game against the Commanders here. Pepe Williams has flashed. Also, Kyle Fuller gets an interception. He needed that one pretty badly. I mean, what have you seen out of the secondary?
Yeah, Brandon Stevens looked really good too. I'm not really those two penalties, whatever. He didn't need to clasp down on Isabella's shoulder pad. Like the fact that he turned and ran with Isabella, who runs a 4-3 with no issue and made a play on that ball in the air was super impressive. So Brandon Stevens looked really good. Kyle Fuller just makes me think of that guy that this is like his 10th training camp. Like he doesn't really care, so he's not really trying, and that's why he's getting cooked, so call it, in practices, but then he looks just fine. So Pepe Williams is like the embodiment of play like a Raven. Marcus Peters is back. I mean, the corner room's deep. I hope they can stay healthy. The safety room's deep. I think Geno Stone had a rough game in this one. Tony Jefferson's had some rough moments. So I don't know if they're going to keep 5 safeties. Again, it's probably going to come down to who contributes on special teams. I thought Armour-Davis Washington looked good. They have some tough decisions ahead. They have 6 guys that I can see cases for all 6. I don't even know if they'll carry 5. I'm not sure they will. So we'll see. It depends on if they see Washington as like kind of a slot corner guy as well. I think that gives him a leg up versus keeping a 5th true safety.
Yeah, and Washington's somebody who I think is really interesting to look at overall in that safety position, cornerback position, very deep for them. But finally, Cole, Jordan Stout, what have you seen from him? The special teams aspect to this, it's huge. Jordan Stout says he has 16 punts at his disposal. How are you feeling about him?
I did a Jordan Stout film room. It might be the first punter film room in Ravens fan history. But no, he looked good. I mean, he dropped 2 inside the 5. His 3rd punt went inside the 16, and it was like a 58-yarder. He just looks like an animal. I think he's going to be so fun to watch. He's got a big leg. He gets good distance, gets great hang time. I think I double-checked PFF. I think they have him charted as the 4th best hang time, and that's to go with the 3rd best net. So, I mean, he's already charting, and this is against other starting punters. Not too many teams are carrying 2 punchers on the roster. So the fact that he's already up there as like a top 5 performer this preseason, I think he's going to be really good really early, and we're going to look back and be like, all right, we could spend a 4th round pick on a punter when he turns out to be this guy.
Yeah, I know the pick was a little bit scrutinized early on, but the fact that Sam Cook retired, you almost have a little bit of Sam Cook and Jordan Stout there. So overall, I like the pick. But all right, last question, Cole. Do the Ravens extend their streak to 23 on Saturday against the Commanders in the preseason?
Death, taxes, and the Ravens winning preseason games. The only things guaranteed in life. Yes, we do.
I'm thinking so too. I don't think they're ever going to lose again. I'm sticking with that overall. But Cole, I appreciate you hopping on here with me. Thank you so much. Tell everybody what you got going on over at Two Guys Watching Football.
Film. Yeah, go over there and check it out. I got an Isaiah Likely film room came out yesterday. Today was Jawan James. Tomorrow we have Josh Ross. Friday, I think, is going to be Kyle Hamilton. So a lot of guys that a lot of the fan base wants to see more of. I'm breaking down between 8 and 12 plays for each player to kind of show you what I'm seeing and try and explain a little bit more about the game. So go check that out over on Two Guys Watching Football on YouTube.
Yeah, be sure to subscribe to Cole. You heard him talk here. He did a great job breaking stuff down, talking trends and everything. And also, if you haven't subscribed to this channel already, be sure to do so. Follow us in audio form as well. But Cole, I appreciate you as always. Thank you so much for hopping on today. That's all I have for you here today, though, on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. When we get back in tomorrow, I'll be diving into more Ravens content rounding out the week. So be sure to stay tuned for that. And I will see you right back here tomorrow.